So what I'll do is I'll officially call the meeting to order. As temporary chair of the Exeter Police Stakeholders Committee, we find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. On November 19, 2020, public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board of the town offices at 10 Front Street. As provided in that public notice, the public may access the meeting online and via phone. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. We'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting and who that person is, which is required under the right to know law. So as we do that, what I'll do first of all is just reiterate the charge of the committee and go over our goals again. And then we'll get into the roll call. And at that point, you can also do introductions as well with, if you have any interest in any of the three positions, which I'll also discuss in a second here, chair, vice chair, and secretary. Okay, so again, we'll use kind of our rules for this. We're going to be raising our hand as Darius is doing on screen, but we'll use the raise hand feature in the Zoom. That will make things a lot easier. So go ahead, Darius.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we follow loosely Robert's Rules of Order in the interest of timeless for meetings and making decisions and calling on votes. Does anyone second that?
So moved.
Excellent. Yeah, so 700 plus pages of Robert's Rules. You all should know that.
No, we'll keep the condensed version, please. Yes.
Condensed version, absolutely. And we'll go over, so myself, the internal stakeholders that are here, and the two members of the select board are not going to be voting members. So it's going to be the 9 of you all that are going to be the voting members. So just to reiterate our goals of the committee, to create opportunities for the town, the Exeter Police Department, business owners, and community residents to engage on a regular basis to investigate priority areas of community building that will create an Exeter Police Department that accurately reflects the community's perception. So we've broken it down into about 5 goals. And I put at first, we put our community and public participation as our number 1, which, as you saw in the agenda, is going to be really the driving force of what this is. We need to know what our people want from us. And you are all the representation of those people. And by doing a citizen survey, I think that's going to get us really some candid responses. And that's going to be our charge for this meeting and then into the next, I'm sure, is really working out what that citizen survey looks like, making sure it reaches the most amount of people that we can get and having a timely response. So we'll go into introductions. Myself, I've been a police officer since 1999, began policing in Massachusetts and then came to New Hampshire. I joined the Exeter Police Department in 2002 and then became your chief in May of 2019. Very forward thinking and progressive in that there is a definite need to move the department ahead and be the best representation that we can be for not only the state, but for the country as well. My command staff and I firmly believe that the worst thing you can say, whether it be a police department or private business, is we've always done it that way. So that's how you become stale and there's no new thoughts or new ways of doing things. So we're forward thinking and we want to connect with you all and see, are we missing things? What can we do better? And because we're not going to be perfect, we understand that, and there's always going to be room for improvement. So what I can do now is go around the list of who's here, and I'll call out your name, give a brief introduction to yourself, and again, state whether you're alone in the room or not. And if you have any inclinations to be a chair, a vice chair, or secretary. Now, I'll give you a quick brief rundown on what those positions entail. So the chair generally presides over the board. They make sure that business is conducted fairly, openly, and efficiently. They'll call the meetings to order, and they'll orchestrate the meeting and also set the agenda. Now, the chair will work with me on setting that agenda. The vice chair basically fills in for the chair when the chair is not available. And then the secretary has a very important job of documenting the minutes. So when it comes to 91A, right to know laws, there's going to be parameters with how those minutes are released to the public, the timeframes and whatnot. And whoever that secretary is, I can work with them on getting that information. The secretary also will record the vote and call out the votes once an appropriate second is made. Okay? So I'll go by my list, and Darius Thompson.
So Darius Thompson, I'm in the barn here at Exeter on 15 Drinkwater Road. There's no one else in the room but myself. And I am a longtime resident of Exeter for well over 21 years now, 20 years. My 21st year. Longtime volunteer and helping out with a number of different events in the community, be it from the Christmas parade or helping out when someone needs something for whatever they need help with, Memorial Day parade, you name it. Or just getting to know some of the different departments in town and working with our police department, as well as working with residents and other businesses here in town as well. Background, I work in human resources for the last 20 years, everything from recruiting to workforce analytics, data management, OFCCP compliance, 508C compliance, as well as working for a national passenger railroad corporation for the last 8 years. Married, have 2 kids, and I also have a beautiful granddaughter that came to this world in July 31st. Her name is Rosie Joe. And as far as looking at interest in any position, I think that it's great for us to express those interests in those positions, but I think this is our first meeting. I mean, we might want to think about what role we're interested in and come back to the next meeting to make decisions versus something right away. That's just my 2 cents. So, and the last part is that being here in New England for the last 40 some odd years, many of which have been owning and running a family roller skating rink for about 25 years in Livermore Falls, Maine. So very well attuned to being in New England, as well as what it means to be a minority in New England and the whole experience that comes with it all. So,
excellent. Thank you. Matthew Carbone.
Hi, I'm Matt Carboni. I'm currently a retired federal employee. I work over at Phillips Exeter Academy as a campus safety officer for Paul Gravel over there. So I know a lot of you guys by face and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Like Darius, I have a rolling skating background. My father built and managed Skateland in Haverhill. So similar to Darius, I understand what a family business is like and the ups and downs of managing it and being part of a community and everything that goes around it. You know, time rotates around a business, and I think it's a great perspective. I know there were some business people that were left off the board, but I think there are a few people here that have connections to those types of small businesses. I've got about 30 years of law enforcement experience. I started my career as a reservist in the Army, as a military police officer in the mid-'80s. Right out of college, I got recruited by DEA. I worked in DEA New York City and Washington, D.C. in headquarters for about 15 years. Post 9/11, I decided to stay in Exeter to raise my family, stable environment here, great community, all the reasons why everybody's here today. I noticed there's a nice connection between New York and Exeter. Not that New York's a bad place to live, but everybody appreciates it for what it is. And later on in life, it's really nice to see people in town that have similar backgrounds and experiences like that. I did about 9 years or 8 years with the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Inspector General. It's basically a nice word for internal affairs at a department level. So I've seen a lot of bad allegations. I've, worked sexual assaults, deaths in the line of duty, deprivation of rights, different cases like that. Seen a lot of bad guys. I've seen a lot of good guys, and I know the difference between the two. I ended my career with the Food and Drug Administration, and believe it or not, they got a couple hundred criminal investigators that work fraud and crimes within the pharmaceutical medical device world, and that's how I ended my career. I love being part of this town, and I like the people in this town. And I've looked at all the people that are in part of this board, and I'm impressed with everybody's background and what brings them to the table today. And it's a privilege to be part of this group.
Thank you.
There's nobody else in the room, Chief, by the way. And my wife may walk through, but she's not here right now.
Okay. Harry King?
Good afternoon. I'm the guy with the black hat. But at any rate, I'm delighted to have a chance to be here and be a part of this. And I thought today I will see what's happening and see what I possibly can contribute to it. My interest in policing is particularly that I think it's an inherent and important part of a democratic society. And democratic society is under attack these days. And I think the police can provide an important side either to promote democracy or to destroy it. And I hope that I can be part of this operation. I was certainly very much impressed by what I've seen so far. And I will look forward as a new person here to try to learn something, and maybe I can contribute something.
I'm sure you can. Thank you. Alexis Simpson?
Hi, how are you? Good to see everybody. I'm Alexis Simpson, and I am in my home. It's a dorm at Phillips Exeter Academy where my husband teaches religion and human rights. I'm alone in the kitchen at the kitchen table right now, but if classes end, there may be some people coming in and out for snacks. Let's see. I am a state representative right now from Exeter, Newmarket, Newfields, and Stratham, representing those towns in Concord. I also represented the town of Exeter in the 2015 and 2016 session. Professionally, I'm a minister, and I'm currently doing pulpit supply in local churches in the area, in the United Church of Christ. Let's see. I think I'll just real quickly say I am really interested in supporting this community. I have especially loved working in the schools when my kids were younger, and as a community member in the last couple of years, just because I have relationships there. And I'm interested in our first point that we're addressing, our first goal that we're addressing, especially. Things come up from time to time, and I just really love the idea of us not talking in silos, but of those of us who represent different parts of the community coming together and opening lines of communication that hopefully we can find ways to maintain those on an ongoing basis. I think that's all for now. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Tanisha Johnson?
Hi, everyone. I am Tanisha Johnson. I have been an Exeter resident for about 3.5 years now. I think I know most of you from my work with formerly at the Exeter YMCA. But I am currently the co-founder and board chair of Black Lives Matter Seacoast. I am also on Racial Unity team here in town as well, and do a lot of different community work. I am here alone in my living room. However, my daughter is here and you may see her walk through. And I also do not have any interest in any officer position for the group at the moment. And I'm just excited to be here and looking forward to all of us working together.
Excellent. Emily Heath.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Heath. I'm the pastor of the Congregational Church here in Exeter, which is the big white church downtown with the red doors. I grew up in a family of folks who worked for the federal government in the intelligence community, and they wanted me to go that route, and I took another route. I have been working on diversity issues since the early mid-90s, including being a gay college kid in Atlanta who didn't really like the police very much because they didn't really like us. And but these days, I'm the chaplain of the Exeter Police Department, which is quite a surprise to me, and have gotten to know the department well and the folks who serve on it, and really love serving them and serving our community.
Thank you.
And there's no one in the room with me.
Excellent. I think that's all of the board members. So what you're also seeing, I explained kind of at the beginning, is some internal stakeholders. And when I refer to that is something that was mentioned in our police.
You're missing Ann. Ann Sermon is not introduced.
Oh, Ann Sermon. Sorry, go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll take my hand down. There we go. Yes, hi. I'm Ann Sermon, and what I bring to the board, I was a select board member from 2014 to 2020. Before that, I was about 10 years on the Budget Recommendations Committee in town. So I think what I bring is I've gotten to know the police department from 6 feet and what I call 60,000 feet. So, and as well as a lot of the other town officials and departments. So that was one of the reasons I thought I might be a sort of a middle of the road person to be on the committee. As a profession, I've been a contract administrator for years. I do a lot of risk management with contracts, so I'm very familiar with that type of work. And I've been in the town since I've owned a home since 99. I started working in the town in about 89. So I have a lot of connection to this town. And I come from a background of public service. My mom was a planning board member in the town of Natick, Massachusetts, where we grew up. Anyway, I am alone in the room, although you might hear barking once in a while. I'll try to mute it if the dogs get a little excited. I would be interested in any one of the officers just because I think I could bring something to the table on any one of the, whether it be chair or secretary, et cetera. I think I could bring something to that because maybe Molly can attest to the fact that I certainly know some of the procedural aspects of it. But I am excited to be on this committee, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I apologize for skipping over you. What we should do next is go to our board representatives that are here before we go with our internal stakeholders. So Molly Cowan.
Hi, everybody. I am one of the 2 select board reps here on this committee. I am really excited. I've lived in town since 2014 with a stint in 2004. So I've known Exeter and worked here in Exeter for years. Proud to represent all of you on the select board. I have 2 young kids who are in remote learning in the elementary school here. It is a challenge that I wouldn't have ever wished for, but we're making it through, and I think teachers are amazing. And what I want to say about this committee, I'm really excited to have a committee, to have this charge, to have a chief who is embracing, the work that we can do as a community, doing the outreach to the community. And what I picture here is not an area where, we invite everybody to air their specific grievances about the police department. I think that this is an opportunity to have great dialogue about where we can improve, the work that we need to do as a community to support our police, and the work that the police department can do to support the community. So I'm really happy to see that this committee is doing this work and diving in here. And I'm alone in the room.
Great, thank you. Selectman Darrell Brown?
Thanks, Darrell Brown. I'm in my business downtown Water Street. I'm alone right now. Customers might come in, so I might have to go off camera. I grew up in New Hampshire in Derry and Salem many years ago, the 70s and 80s, and I've moved to Exeter in 2015. I've lived in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and Concord before that. I was a selectman in Plymouth from 2008 to 2011, I think it was. So I'm just happy to help and, in support of community PD relations.
Good to have you. So with our internal members, again, non-voting, but they're here. There are different jobs that they have. Some are civilian, some are sworn. You're going to see some dispatchers, some clerical, some officers, and within those officers, you're also going to have field training officers, supervisors, community relations officers, things like that. So they're here to kind of absorb everything that you all have to say. If there's an area that they have an expertise in, say it's field training or something like that, they can contribute to the group as well. And they're also going to be able to bring back what we learn at these meetings to their peers as well. So that's the purpose of having them here. They'll be in and out as they can, with the work schedules and whatnot. They might not all be here for every single meeting, but you might see some different faces and whatnot. So we'll go ahead and we'll introduce them. We'll start with Deputy Chief Michael Monk.
Hi, folks. My name is Mike Monk. I've been a police officer here in New Hampshire for 26 years. 22 of them have been here serving the town of Exeter, and I oversee the patrol and communication divisions.
Excellent. We'll go to Sergeant Brian Hanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Hanna. I'm here alone in my basement room. I'm currently the evening shift supervisor, so a sergeant on the department, and I'm also a use of force instructor for firearms, OC, and taser, and I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say.
Excellent. Community Resource Officer Bruce Page.
Hey, everybody. I'm Bruce Page. I've been here since 2004. Currently a detective, and I also do community relations stuff, which I really enjoy doing. I think police work has a lot to do with, in my opinion, quality of life, which is why I wanted to be part of this. And if there's something we can do to improve the quality of life for the citizens in the town, that's the main goal here for me. So,
Officer Matthew Oppenlander.
Good evening. I am Matt Oppenlander. I've been an officer with the PD for about 9 years now. I served in the U.S. Army for 9 years. And I'm also currently the union president, represent the rank and file, so to speak, officers and dispatchers. Interested to get this committee started. Really looking forward to develop that relationship between the PD and the town. And I don't really view there being sides. This is a teamwork. This is a one team, one goal kind of thing. And just really develop that understanding from each perspective and just really get this thing going. So that's about it.
Thank you. Dispatcher Supervisor Jesse Shoup.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jess Shoup. I've been with the town for about 12 years. I've been dispatching for 20, and I'm the dispatch supervisor here. And I have Ashley with me, who's also a dispatcher.
Excellent. And we have legal assistant Colby Crafton.
Hi, I'm Colby Crafton. I'm a legal assistant and an administrative assistant here at the Exeter Police Department. I've been in my current position probably about 1.5 years. Before that, I was a full-time dispatcher with the Exeter Police Department for about 4 years.
Great, and I see that Mr. Elliot Berkowitz was just able to join us. Hello, we're just going through introductions and also stating if you have any interest in any of the officer positions, the chair, the vice chair, or the secretary.
I've been online since 2:45, but I did it wrong. So I was watching everything you did, but would you like me to introduce myself now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Elliot Berkowitz. I'm at home at 139 Water Street. I'm alone. There's nobody else here. I'm a resident of Exeter for 35 years. I moved here in 1985, 1 year after I retired from the New York City Police Department. Prior to the New York City Police Department, I was a MP in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. I live in town. My wife and I own several businesses, and I'm very interested in doing anything I can to keep Exeter the wonderful town that I think it is. And I'm not available for any of those three positions because I am up to my eyeballs in work already. But anyway, I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you. So I know Mr. Thompson made a comment about waiting another week for the positions. I would like to get a chair and a vice chair and secretary going as quickly as we can, just to get some kind of order going. And now would be the time for the voting members to make any kind of motions.
Can I ask a question, Chief?
Yes.
So is the intent for you not to be the leader of this team, or is it possible that you could be the leader of this team?
The intent is for me to be a sponge and absorb everything that you folks come up with, and obviously offer you insight into how we do things and what we are doing, and use our internal members to help with that. But really, it's you folks, you 9 folks, advising me on our goals. So I'd rather not be the head of it or any kind of officer position, but I would work directly with the chair and facilitate that. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't want to violate Robert's rules because I don't really know him, Darian, but
Darius.
If Darian's interested in teaching us all or being a leader in some way, you've got 2 leaders with Darian and Ian present. And I know that Katie's missing, but I hear that she's a phenomenal editor and writer and would probably be one of the better ones of the group for copious notes of correspondence. But I don't want to speak out of line on her behalf. I would hope that she would volunteer for something like that if she had the time available for it. But I think that buy-in by the chief and his team is just as important as what we as a group provide across the table. So I understand the chief's perspective, and I think Ian and Darian definitely have a relationship already with the chief. It's, being in town and being involved in other matters. Again, Darian, I don't want to go outside Robert's rule, but I mean, the natural direction would be for one of you 2 to take a leadership role if the chief doesn't want to. It's my suggestion.
So if we're having a discussion, and just to correct it, it's Darius.
Sorry, Darius.
Okay. So I would be more than happy to make a nomination. The formal nomination would be as a motion to nominate Ann Sermon for chair. I don't necessarily want to, if she chooses not to, then I would be more than happy to consider that, or vice chair. And either way.
Well, I'll second the nomination for Ann.
Okay.
And she's used to these types of meetings and the protocol. And the chief, as long as nobody else has a objection to that, I'll second it.
We'll have a discussion.
May I just speak? I just wanted to clarify what I see. It isn't so much that the chief doesn't want to take a leadership role. I think Molly and Daryl would support me in this. I see the chief, if you want to compare this to a select board type of meeting or type of board, that the chief is in the role of similar to what Rustine is, where that person is your staff person who is bringing all the knowledge to us as the dedicated people who don't always know the ins and outs. So, because that was my thought originally too, that you would probably have the chief as the leader of this, but he has to, I think, stay somewhat neutral. He's sort of Switzerland, but the information gatherer for us and the expertise, and he's brought all those other stakeholders that can also help us. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And you can have a discussion on whether or not again, I'd be happy to be the chair if you guys will, tolerate me. That's all I'll say about that. Thank you.
So the motion's on the table. We're up for discussion right now as far as the nomination for chair, which would be Ann. Is there any further discussion or questions from the remaining board members, committee members?
Alexis Simpson?
Yeah.
I have my hand up. I would really appreciate, Ann, your experience in leading this committee. So thank you for stepping forward to offer to do that.
Harry, any comments, Harry?
If you want to close the comment, you can call a question or.
Yeah. So if there's no more discussion, then we'll call a question. The question on the table is nomination for Ann to be chair. All those in favor say aye.
I think you have to do a roll call vote because I think the chief at this point can do the roll call.
Yeah.
Okay. Matthew Carboni?
Aye.
Emily Heath?
Aye.
Darius Thompson?
Aye.
Harry King?
Aye.
Tanisha Johnson?
Aye.
Alexis Simpson?
Aye.
Elliot Berkowitz?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Ann Sermon will be the chair. Do we have any motions for vice chair? I believe Mr. Thompson mentioned he might be interested.
I would be interested, but I also want to know if there's anyone else that's on the committee would be interested as well.
I make a motion that Darius be the deputy chair.
Don't move.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Ann Sermon?
Aye.
Matthew Carboni?
Aye.
Emily Heath?
Aye.
Harry King?
Aye.
Tanisha Johnson?
Aye.
Alexis Simpson?
Aye.
Elliot Berkowitz?
Aye.
Unanimous again. Darius Thompson will be the vice chair. For secretary, we are missing Katie Adams. She was potentially somebody that might be interested in that. Does the board want to hold off till she can attend the next meeting on that?
That might not be a bad idea.
Matthew Carboni?
Chief, if she's already shown an intention, I mean, this is her wheelhouse. I mean, this would,
well,
she has not.
She hasn't to me. I don't know if any of you know.
All right.
She has.
No, then I agree. We should wait until she makes herself available.
Okay. So for this meeting, I'll take the minutes on this one.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you all. So let's get right into our agenda, which is discussion action items. Goal number 1, develop, strengthen, and sustain partnerships. Strengthen community engagement and public participation. So I believe at this point, since we do have a chair, Ms. Sermon can take the reins on this.
Thank you very much, Chief. This is kind of how it's done. So I apologize if I'm not as smooth as I might be. But and the Chief, I'm going to rely on you to sort of help me where you wanted this to go originally. But I think what we could do is certainly open up it as a discussion as to, what this goal, basically, I think the community input was your survey. I think in the memo you sent out to all of us, and anyone who wants to, we can have discussion. I think the survey was the key for us to get the input from the members of the town, as many people as we possibly can. And it was great that you had that example of what Portsmouth had done for a survey, at least to get us started. Is that where, would everyone like to talk about the survey at this point, or more the goal itself? Because to me, we can't get to any of A until we find out really what the community thinks we need to be doing as well. Or we can start talking about the goal itself and how we want to get there. I'm open to anyone raising a hand, either electronically or physically, in terms of that discussion.
So perhaps we discussed the types of questions. On that Portsmouth survey, there were 16 questions.
Right.
And maybe there are questions on there that don't fit Exeter as well, or maybe there's questions you want to see more specific to your community of Exeter. So we can nail out those questions as best as we can. Does anybody have input on that?
I actually had a couple that I thought I might just throw out for people, and then and maybe they're kind of strange. Some are more open-ended. One of them that I wanted to ask was of the people, do you know what is meant by community policing? I mean, do people know what that means? And that might be too broad. And again, I'm just going to throw out a few of these, and you can go back. Can you name any events that the Exeter Police Department sponsored in the past 5 years? I mean, that would just be one you might throw out there to get people thinking, gee, do I know if they did anything? And then on a more serious note, and this was similar to one of the ones in Portsmouth, what do you think is the most frequent call responded to by the Exeter Police Department? I thought, people probably don't know what you might think is the most frequent one might not be. And then there was even some on police presence. Do you think how much police presence you think there is? Too much, too little? Years ago, I remember someone saying they were leaving town because they saw too many police cruisers cruising around town. I mean, again, that's just anecdotal. Other people like, where are the police when you need one, type of thing. So that's just generally what I came up with. And now that I'm the chair, I don't want to take over. I'll let other people speak, but I figured I'll let you know what I had come up with as potential types of questions, and then leave it up to the rest of the group to respond. And am I on the right track, Chief? That's what I want to make sure for.
Yes, absolutely. So our goal as well with this survey is to give it to our officers and civilians that work here. Is what you'll find is what the town sees as a priority for the police department might not match what the officers think is a priority. So it's important to have that kind of checks and balances there. And you're right, perception is reality. So you think back, and I can recall, I think that what you're mentioning many years ago is that the perception was that the Exeter police were everywhere in town, stopping everything that moved. Where are we today with that? Do people see us less? I know Mr. Carboni mentioned it during his interview, that he liked the fact that we were at the borders, we were at, making active traffic enforcement in town. So, what does the community want, and what do they see us doing day by day? You might have some community members think we have 10 officers out there at a time. That speaks to our activity. Some might say, you know what, I rarely see an officer in my neighborhood. Why is that? So maybe some questions like that. How often do you see a police officer in your neighborhood? Things like that.
Well, I'd like to make a comment relative to just overall community contact with the police. Every time somebody talks to an officer talks to somebody, it's got to make some kind of an impression. And we would like, if possible, I would think, to have people feel that the contact between the civilian and the officer is a positive one rather than being a negative one. And very often the situation is that the contact between officers and a particular civilian is not a pleasant one. And it is not rewarding as far as the civilian is concerned. And that's troubling. I would think the one of the goals would be is to have the contacts between the police and a civilian is a positive one, and rather than it being a negative one. And today, there's a tendency in policing to do more and more by the book and by the statistics. And everything becomes a data point. And if people become data points on a police chart, that kind of loses the humanity. And I think the important situation is, in these relationships, is the humanity which is involved, and the kind of relationship which people feel when they have contact with the police. Now, you have a situation today where you've got a certain minimum numbers of people in the police, and you have got minimum amounts of time. Is how much time do the police have to talk with people where there's a positive relationship rather than a negative relationship? And I think that could be particularly a problem today as more and more policing becomes a matter of statistics. People become data points rather than people. And so I think it's a difficult, problematical matter for management is how do you provide situations so that the police have an opportunity to have a positive relationship with the people rather than a negative relationship. And I think that's a conundrum. So I'll leave it with that as a situation of how do you have positive relationships with people if your relationships when you're making contact are normally negative ones. So that's the problem.
So there's a lot to unpack there, Mr. King. You hit a lot of good points there. Some of those things we can address on an internal survey by asking officers, do you feel you have not enough time on calls, too much time on calls, or just the right amount of time? So I know here we stress that take all the time you need. You're not in a rush. You're not going from call to call, but take the time you need to connect with that citizen and do the job correctly. And they all know that. I think you touch on another point. We're not going to be naive and think we're going to get 100% positive feedback on any kind of community survey. We are a police department. Part of being the police is holding people accountable when they break the law. So, of course, there's going to be people that are upset that they're being held accountable. And we're going to hear those gripes, too. Most important thing is those people are treated fairly. So they're held accountable, i.e., whether they got a speeding ticket or they got arrested, but they were treated fairly. That's the most important thing. So very good points.
Molly, do you have your hand raised? I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong.
I just put it up.
Okay.
I would be, I think a lot of the questions that were already talked about in terms of what is interesting or what would be interesting data points that we can look at and evaluate. I think a lot of the things that are important to qualify and quantify based on community perception are like, what are the kind of calls that the police are getting called about? What is the training that looks like for police officers? I think, those are important things to understand about where the community is coming from and what the perception is. I also think, some of the questions about like, how many police officers do we have as a community? I wonder how accurately our residents know about those kind of things as well. And I want to make a point that I think that we can we should look at our survey in terms of, what is going to get the most responses and what are people going to complete, which is typically not a terribly long survey. But I would like to see some open-ended questions, some opportunity for people to write, about their experience, or, have more than, what is just the, what do we think is going to be the answer, and try to anticipate that, so I would like to see some open-ended questions as well.
Chief, just real quick. So for today, what I was wondering as a sort of an action item when this meeting is over, should we have it so, because this is a great discussion, by the way, this is really good, where people, I know we have 91A to deal with, but somehow sort of can email or come up with your questions on a list, and we can somehow get some of those for the next meeting. Was that part of your goal, that we got some more questions that we can as a committee discuss, and anyone else who wants to jump in and speak to this certainly can? Is that part of the goal, that we can all kind of decide what kind of questions we want? And I don't want to jump ahead, but one of my biggest concerns once we get to the survey is getting it out there and getting tons of people to respond. And that's probably the next thing we can be talking about when we get to vehicle. But the survey is only going to be as good as however many folks we can get it to, so we're going to really want to get this out to everyone. But taking a step back, the best way to bring all those questions together, I'm wondering if that's a good assignment for all of us for our next meeting, is to have, unless you have them already, which is great, we can compile all the questions and review them at our next meeting and call them out and see what we want to do. Feel free to speak to that, anyone.
Yes, I've been taking notes. So I can compile a list of the questions on what I think from this conversation people want to see, and then we can send that out to the group, and then we can hash that out. And again, also 91A, so everything that we hash out is discoverable and releasable, so we can do that. But in the interest of time, since we're only meeting 2 times a month.
Right. The idea, and I think that's one of the cool things about this committee. We'll be on task, and we'll just keep on marching right down and getting tasks accomplished, so that people are going to see we are an action-oriented group. Anyone else have any comments regarding the survey questions? We're still on number 1 with the community input for the questions.
Raise my hand. So relative to the survey, I think it's important that the survey be done both internally and externally. Primarily to the community, we need to get that, but we also should be taking the pulse of our police force to understand, some of their perspectives and their knowledge and their experience and their impressions of dealing with the public, and enforcing and holding people accountable. I think some of those questions should be geared towards them. So maybe it's a 2-prong approach, that we have similar or related or questions that build upon one another as we work towards completing our mission.
Well, can we get a copy of the survey before it goes out?
Yes, we will work on that.
Absolutely.
So for the sermon, if I could, for the survey vehicle, I did ask Connor Barry from the Communications Advisory Committee to attend, but I don't know if he was able to make it. I don't see him, but I know Selectman Darrell Brown is also on that committee as the board rep, and I think they will be able to help us greatly with getting a vehicle, how to get this out there to the most amount of people and whatnot. Does anybody have experience with surveys, or,
Yeah, I use them a lot in the church. The church using usually Survey Monkey. The key is you have to send the survey out several different ways. It has to be available on social media, via email, on the town page, that sort of thing, so that you can get a representative sample. And just encourage it to get shared. So having an online survey is probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
And then it's all about advertising it as many which ways as we can. Exactly. Ms. Simpson.
Yes, I think you were just about to say what I was going to say, which is that's one of the great things about having all of us on the meeting and from different kind of areas of the community and having different contacts and stuff, that I think having all of us able to share the survey and point people towards it in different ways will be critical to that.
Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up?
Ms. Johnson had her hand up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did as well. Which one?
Ladies first.
Absolutely.
I was going to say the same thing that Emily said and Alexis. We definitely need multiple avenues, but we also have to consider that a lot of our senior residents, and Exeter has a lot of senior residents, will not be completing surveys online. You also have to think about those who don't have internet and who can't afford internet and social media. So we may have to do paper surveys as well as door-to-door, specifically in certain neighborhoods. So I just want to make sure we think about it in an equitable way when we're kind of doing these survey vehicles. So I know it costs money to do things paper and things like that. So I fully understand that. But if we want to get the array of, results and make sure it's conclusive, that we want to think about those things.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I'll have Daryl and then you, Ms. Heath. All right.
So I just wanted to bring in some peripheral awareness that I think there's a planning board survey out right now and then communications survey that's live as well. So just an awareness about the data, about the sample set, like how it might be affected by, you're going to hear from people who are either really versed in doing surveys lately or, so that's just a peripheral point of information.
Okay. I was just going to say, I agree. We need to have multiple ways of putting it out. But one thing, I know we were worried at my church because we have older folks that they wouldn't do the surveys. And looking at the demographics of responses, they're actually our most avid online survey takers. So not to discount that a lot of our older folks actually are good at this online survey. Then just personally, just a reminder, I'm non-binary. I don't use Ms. as my form of address, please.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. I think the last time the Exeter Police Department did a community survey was over 10 years ago. I want to say close to 15 years ago, and they sent paper out with the tax, with your taxes. So the response was not very good. Because some of you might remember that.
Vaguely.
Well, Molly and then Ms. Johnson.
I just also want to point out, as we are having this discussion, this is not going to be a scientifically valid survey. It's just to gauge the, who is paying attention and try to gauge as much information as we can. If we were going to be able to actually derive real statistical results from this, which I don't think we're going to be able to do. We would have to have a much more scientific approach to make sure that we're getting all of the respondents and sampling the right size of people and, making sure that all of the demographics are represented. That is not to say that we shouldn't try to do this as accurately and comprehensively as possible. But if we are, having, I think that these are two discussions, and then the results are going to be interesting and informative, but are not going to be, they're not going to take the place of all the work that this committee is going to have to do, which is to reach out to every single person in this town and attempt to draw them into this conversation.
Ms. Johnson.
I definitely understand that, but I think there's a unique perspective of certain folks in this town that we can't discount. So I think we definitely need to make an effort to make sure we reach certain areas of this town, because without those perspectives, you're looking at opinions and of those that maybe don't have negative encounters with the police or don't feel like they have an issue with police. And then that just makes our work here, not as valuable. But I also wanted to say, we want to make sure if we are going to have questions like what's your gender and age and all those things on this survey, we want to make sure that we do it right, so that people feel valued by, that stuff. So I just wanted to point that out there because Emily brought it up and it made me really think about it because I saw that in the Portsmouth survey and I was like, ooh, got to change that. So.
Well, exactly. We don't need any of those on there. Age might help us, to figure out where we're at with the different age groups, but we don't need to know gender. We don't need to know any of those things.
Well, I'm sorry. I actually think knowing things like gender is helpful for this.
Okay.
I think that people do have different experiences with the police based on gender, based on race, based on ethnicity, and we probably do need to ask about this stuff.
Well, that's a conversation for the 9 of you.
Right, and it's optional too. They don't have to respond to it. So those you can have it, and then those who respond, and then those who don't have to.
I'm more concerned with, for an online survey, how do you do the checks and balances of an Exeter resident versus somebody from another state logging in, and how does that work?
Well, I think that's what I mean by we can't, there's no way that we can statistically say that these are, there's not going to be those kind of controls that we can implement here just because we're not doing this with a budget. We're going to put this together probably in a Google form and we're going to do the best we can. And we're going to, it's going to be incumbent upon each of us on this committee to do the outreach to make sure we are really being inclusive and asking the right questions as much as we can. But I also think that, we're not going to be able to control for IEP address or, location. And we're not going to verify that, we have this percentage of people in the town. So we have to have this percentage of people responding for, it's not a poll in the statistical sense. So I think it's going to be really important to have us as committee members do the important outreach to make sure that people are having their voices heard.
Well, is this just to be an online survey or is there going to be further outreach?
I think we had established that we're going to try to do it in a variety of forms. I know, Mr. Thompson, you had your hand up.
Yes, so a couple of things. One, in doing the survey, we definitely want to make it as accessible as possible, that is representative as much as the best we can relative to the respondents, giving them the opportunity to provide as much detail or as little as they want, and also do it in a way such that it's available either by paper. If someone needs assistive technology to complete the survey, they're able to do that. And we can do it in a cost-effective, if not free way, to get the best information that we can that touches as many as possible, knowing that it's incumbent upon us to help get out to those areas of the community that may or may not be responding to the survey to try to get them to encourage them to respond, because we're there representing them on this committee. So, and kind of wrapping this up to a point, the task that I understand to be is that we need to come up with review some of the survey questions out there, come back to the table, or the next meeting to come together with some survey questions, review those and or put them together. And then also look at what are some of the best options and platforms to put this out there as far as a survey, and then set dates and times for the survey to go out and look for responses for that. I'm happy to continue having those discussions, but I see that we have 5 goals to look at. If the intent is to go over all 5 goals, and if we take as long as we did on the first one, not saying that time is an issue, just wanted to be cognizant of everyone else's commitments and other things they have. If we are trying to cover this all at once, then we will be here a little while longer, which is fine. But if we want to go over each goal and figure out what the highlights are, what our next activities are, not that we're going to complete all 5 goals in one meeting, but at least to kind of level set the expectations and work on deliverables as we go forward for each of our meetings that are scheduled.
Okay, Ms. Simpson wanted to speak, and then we'll come back.
About the question, I wanted to talk for a minute about the question about how do you make sure that it's people from Exeter who are filling out the survey. I have limited experience sending surveys, but I know in taking them and in reading about them that sometimes you can have a question that is not tied to the answers that are in the survey. So one way, I don't know if that's possible with MailChimp, what is that? SurveyMonkey. I don't know if it's possible to ask someone's address, but in a way that doesn't link it to the other answers in the survey. And I think that's possible, but I don't know how easy or hard that is to do. But that would be one kind of way to deter people outside of Exeter.
And Mr. Carboni.
Thank you. Either way is fine. If there's something really egregious that's being put in a survey, obviously the chief is going to naturally want to follow up with that person. And, putting a contact phone number or address, that's a natural part of following up. So to Ms. Simpson's point, people that really want to be reached back out to and talked to or contacted for follow-up, they'll fill that in if they want feedback. If someone just wants to lob a hand grenade and make an accusation, or rant, well, everybody's adults here. They've been around long enough to understand the difference between that person and someone who's constructively has feedback or input. So, while I'm talking, I just let you know I volunteer to go to any community and knock and talk or pass things out. My time's off and stuff. So as long as those that are technically savvy handle the SurveyMonkey and all the other stuff online, if they need someone to go to a particular neighborhood, community, hand things out, even if they're takes them to the electronic version, we could have a very short paper version and they can mail it to town, or I can come back and pick it up, or they can just drop it off at the front desk of the police station if they wanted to. But even more importantly, to Emily's point on SurveyMonkey, if they know it's there and they log into the town website, they're off to the races. So there's so many things that everybody's talking about, all the same things, but we'll get it done. So to Darius's point, I guess, how much further deeper do you guys want to go, and how much more time you want to address to it?
Right. I'll let Deputy Chief Monk speak, and then we'll come back.
Hi, my only question was, does anybody in here have a relationship with somebody at a college or university? Because my thought was that perhaps going into the next semester for communications, something like that, since we're going to do a mixed media, it sounds like, that might be something a class like that would be interested in helping with.
Yeah, that's a good point. They have their whole survey center to begin with, but there might be some whole intern group that would be interested in that. Does anyone have a connection at the university?
I have 2 kids in the university, one in Lowell and one up at UNH, and I'll ask if they have friends that are studying that or are interested in that.
I have some connections at UNH and Great Bay as well, that I can talk to some of the professors and department directors to get them involved.
Excellent. So I'm thinking, just real quick, and I know I think we're trying to keep this about an hour. Especially our first meeting. There's a lot going on, and I wanted to make sure I read your agenda properly, Chief, so that the goal number A, to do that, we were talking about this as the community input as part of that. Is that correct? Because I understand what Mr. Thompson is saying. We can certainly. There's a lot in goal A that's more than seeing, but this to me looked like a subset of that to get to, as one piece to get to that. Did I read that? Okay.
Exactly. The goal is to, the goals, each single goal, spend a few meetings on each one. We're not going to cover all 5 in one meeting.
Right.
So it'll take us right along. If we need more time, we can have more time.
Because I think we've gotten a lot out here right now. And I think for the next meeting, there's folks, I don't even mind talking to Greg Bisson about surveys. He's like one of the experts on surveys, I think, as you know, in terms of things he's had to do. I know he's probably worked with the communications committee. I'm happy to reach out to him, see how they did all their surveys for the rec department. I know Darren Wynnum's done all kinds of economic development ones. So we've got kind of a raft of folks that could give me their experiences. I'm happy to take that one on myself. And I totally agree with everyone who's saying, if we could, short of COVID, I'd go door to door. I mean, I don't mind doing that to some degree. Or, like you said, point people in the direction. We've got a stack of questionnaires sitting at the town office or the police department, or please come. And, any which way we need to get the information in the hands of everyone, whatever mediums we need to. So I think we're all on the same page there. I think we've got a lot of consensus on that, and a lot of great ideas. That's great about this group. And so should that be, I would say that's a good action item for our next, I know you have timeline. So by our next meeting, if we have even our own, like you said, we'll gather the questions that we'll be sending in to the chief, and then we can actually be ferreting out some of these other actual ways of doing it to Deputy Chief Monk's idea. Anyone else who has ideas like that was a great one. Ways we can get this information out, because that's, Ms. Cowan's absolutely right. That's our job. We're the ones that are going to get all this out to the people. That's why we're the diverse group that we are. We've got a lot of access to a lot of different areas. So on that note, is there any other discussion or any other items anyone wants to just touch on for our first meeting before we wrap this up, and then a little bit of feedback on how we're doing? I think an hour is what we want to shoot for. I'm sure there might be one that might go longer, but I want to be mindful of everybody's schedules and time, and everyone's a volunteer here. Does that sound like a good plan going forward between, to try to keep these to an hour? People are nodding. Okay.
I'm trying to raise my hand, but I'm like, all right.
Well, and we're doing it intently, which I like that it's intense, that it's every other week. So we're gonna keep momentum on this so that we can get our goals accomplished, and in short order. I think that's how we'll keep the task, because we won't be dragging things out, because we have a lot to do, and we've got a lot of motivated people right here.
And we'll be coming back to this one. We'll do goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But obviously, when the surveys, we're going to wait for them to come back. In the meantime, we'll move on to the other goals, and then we'll revisit goal 1 again at the end.
Am I missing anybody?
Whatever we do as far as the surveys and getting it out, we definitely need to make certain that we're COVID safe, and just be respectful of that. But any way we can get the survey out electronically or by paper, if we can leave it in places to have them drop it off. So I think it's those are the details we can work out, but it's how first in mind.
That's a good point. I don't believe the town's allowing soliciting at this point with COVID.
No.
Right, that's right, yeah. Mr. Carboni?
We could, let's just say the elderly complex on Water Street, we can leave stuff in the lobby there. If there's a trailer park in town that you're afraid that you're not going to get any feedback, all the mailboxes are in one spot. We can post something on by the mailboxes that, the survey is taking place and they need to just log in. Or they can go to the police department and pick up a paper form and fill it in, so there are, without knocking and talking, so to speak, we can still advertise with people's eyeballs, or, the corner stores, right? Where people go and pick up their milk or bread, or, we can post something on the bulletin board there, so there are still traditional ways of letting people know in town that this is going on, the newspaper, obviously, we're all on the same sheet of music.
Good. Excellent. So with that, I think we're on to the next, well, clearly no correspondence. We may have correspondence after this meeting to go through at our next meeting. Does anyone have anything else? Otherwise, have I missed anything, Chief, or anyone else? Darius, I see your hand up.
Just one thing, the topic that was brought up earlier, but just for all of us to be aware, is everyone familiar with 91A and what that means? Do you have any questions about it? If you do, this is a place we can talk about it, or we can speak about it individually, what that means. But in short, basically it means that if we're over a quorum, we have 9. So there's a certain number. If we get together, do any communications, in short, everything's discoverable, if we have any communications or documenting. If it constitutes a meeting, we need to be very cautious about that and do everything and not get together outside of this. So if 6 of us got together individually or we could not do that. That would be in violation of 91A, because that would be technically having a meeting. So just to be aware of it, read up on it if you have any questions. That's all.
Well, I know that I, for one, could use more information.
Okay, certainly.
I can actually distribute. There's a whole book on 91A, but there's a condensed version of that we can get to everyone, just so you know. You can certainly look up the RSA, but we can basically give you the Campbell soup version of it. And it's just so you know, you could violate it and not mean to. You know, that's the whole thing. So it's all about right to know and making sure that everything we do is transparent and doesn't look like like you're having a meeting when you shouldn't be. So we just want to make sure that folks are aware of that, because it's usually inadvertent when people have a problem with it.
Yep.
It's a rare thing that it's an intentional breach.
But we'll gather the short version and pass it around as an item for everyone to review for next meeting.
Yep. And if you have any questions, we can help you with that. Does anyone else have anything? Again, it's our first meeting, so I really Mr. Berkowitz?
Just a possibility with these questionnaires, if we put them, there's a lot of coffee shops, donut shops, downtown places where people are in every day, and they're probably mostly local. If we put some kind of a display with that, I think we'll get a pretty good response from that.
Well, that's a great idea, because people are still out and about. That's great. That's fabulous. Right, there's so far no bad ideas. Loving this. Too bad we didn't have this before the parade. Oh well, we got plenty more activities.
Absolutely.
Any final comments from the chief or from any of the select board members or any of our other members?
No, just thank you again for your volunteering, and we're looking forward to going on with this and seeing where this takes us.
Well, we appreciate all the time of the other stakeholders, their staff, and all the other folks we're looking forward to having their input as well, because that's going to help guide us. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay.
Yeah.
Now, all in favor, now am I in charge? Do I have to call the roll now since I'm the chair? We don't have a clerk. Okay. Reverend Heath? Do I have that right?
Yeah. Emily's fine. Reverend Doctor, but Emily's fine.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to miss anybody. Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Carboni?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Berkowitz?
Aye.
Who have I missed? I'm following my list of voting members. Have I missed anyone?
I think you got everybody.
And myself, I say aye. The chair says aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.